A chuck roast is best cooked low and slow so it can become tender and delicious. This is a classic preparation with red wine and vegetables, which will later be turned into one of the best sauces you've ever had. Take a 3 to 4 pound chuck roast and cut it in half lengthwise. Then cut each half into 3 even pieces. This will shorten the cooking process and provide good sized portions for each person. If you see a large pocket of fat on one of the pieces, you can slice it off. Liberally season each piece with salt, and it's important to let the salt sit for at least 20 minutes to flavor the meat. In the meantime, prepare the mirepoix by roughly chopping 2 carrots, 2 to 3 stalks of celery, and 1 yellow onion. Then crush and peel 2 garlic cloves. After the meat sits with the salt, it will draw some of the moisture out. So pat each piece completely dry with paper towels before searing. If you didn't dry it off, the meat would steam instead of brown and wouldn't be nearly as flavorful. In a Dutch oven on medium-high heat, add a tablespoon of neutral oil and then drop in each piece of meat. Press them down and let it sear untouched for a couple minutes so it can get very golden brown. Then flip and repeat. Try and sear at least 3 sides of each piece before removing them from the pan. Now turn the heat down to medium-low and drop in the carrots, celery, and onion along with a pinch of salt. Toss them around and you can add a drizzle of olive oil if your pan is looking dry. After a couple minutes, the vegetables should let out some moisture, which will help remove the brown bits from the bottom of the pan. I also switched to a wooden spoon to help scrape everything up. Make room for the garlic, toss that in, and let everything cook together for another couple minutes before adding 1 tablespoon of tomato paste. Stir that around until everything is well coated and has changed color. Pour in a half bottle of red wine, ideally Pinot Noir, but you can probably use whatever you have on hand that isn't wicked strong. Turn the heat up to medium and let that simmer for a few minutes to cook out the alcohol. In the meantime, gather a bunch of thyme sprigs and tie them together in a bundle so it's easy to remove later. You can use butcher's twine for this, or just one of the longer thyme sprigs to tie a knot. After the wine reduces for a few minutes, this is a good time to add another pinch of salt and pepper, before putting back the meat in an even layer. Toss in a couple bay leaves, the thyme bundle, and some beef broth. You want to add enough broth to almost cover the meat, but leave the tops exposed. Here I used about 2 cups. Using water is fine as well. Now just bring it back to a simmer before covering it with the lid. Then place the pot into the center of a 350-degree oven. Since we broke down the meat into smaller pieces, it should only take a little over 2 hours to braise and become tender. About every 30 minutes, you'll want to take it out and flip over the meat so it cooks evenly in the liquid. And make sure it's cooking at a steady and low simmer. You'll notice that each time you check on it, there will be less and less liquid, and naturally, the sides of the pan will get browner and browner, which you can try to scrape down back into the liquid if you want to, but not necessary. You don't want the meat to get too tender and completely fall apart, so it's important to test a piece at the 2-hour mark. If you can't easily cut into it with a fork or tongs, then put it back in the oven for another 15 to 30 minutes to finish cooking. Once it is tender, take the meat out of the pot and let it rest on a plate while you make the sauce. There will be a good amount of oil from the beef at the top of the pot, but you can remove some of with a paper towel, but also not totally necessary. Through a strainer into a saucepan, pour in the liquid from the pot, and stir around the vegetables with a spoon to get out all the liquid. From the strainer, add back most of the carrot pieces and 1 or 2 pieces of celery, which will be used to thicken the sauce. Now, with an immersion or normal blender, blend it all up until it's completely smooth. Put the pan back on the stove on low for a couple minutes to heat it through and reduce it slightly, and then it should easily coat your spoon. Now just plate it up with your choice of starch. I like baked potato since the beef is so flavorful, but you could also do mashed potatoes or even rice. Add a good amount of sauce on the bottom of the plate before adding the meat and a little more sauce on top before enjoying.